Ethan Carter stood in the fluorescent-lit community college cafeteria, his tray wobbling with a soggy sandwich and a bruised apple. At 22, he was a scholarship student scraping by, his jeans frayed at the hems, his dreams of becoming a social worker fraying just as fast. Rent was overdue, his laptop was held together with duct tape, and his part-time job at the campus library barely covered textbooks. Yet, Ethan's eyes sparkled with quiet determination, his smile a beacon for anyone who felt invisible. He tutored struggling classmates for free, shared his meager meals, and never let the weight of his circumstances dim his kindness. One rainy afternoon, while shelving books in the library's quiet corner, Ethan overheard a conversation that would change his life. A woman's voice, sharp yet warm, echoed from a nearby study room. "I don't need more investments. I need someone who sees beyond my bank account." Curious, Ethan peeked through the glass door. There sat Eleanor Voss, the 71-year-old billionaire CEO of Voss Enterprises, a tech empire revolutionizing renewable energy. Her silver hair was swept into an elegant chignon, her tailored suit impeccable, but her eyes carried a loneliness that mirrored Ethan's own. Eleanor was a legend, sharp-witted, fiercely independent, and famously private. She'd built her company from a garage startup to a global powerhouse, but her personal life was a closed book. No husband, no children, just a legacy of philanthropy and a reputation for cutting through corporate nonsense. She was at the college to fund a new scholarship program, but her presence felt like a comet streaking through Ethan's gray world. Their meeting was accidental. Ethan, juggling an armful of books, tripped near her table, sending paperbacks sprawling. Mortified, he scrambled to pick them up, muttering apologies. Eleanor's laugh was low and genuine. "You're more coordinated with kindness than with books, young man," she said, helping him gather the mess. They talked, first about literature, then about life. Ethan's sincerity disarmed her. He spoke of his dream to help at-risk youth, his nights volunteering at a local shelter, and the mother he'd lost to cancer, who'd taught him that love was giving without expecting anything back. Eleanor saw something in Ethan, a spark of selflessness she'd rarely encountered in her world of boardrooms and sycophants. Over coffee the next day, she made an outrageous proposal. "Marry me," she said, her tone half serious, half testing. "Not for love, but for purpose. I'm old, Ethan. I need someone I trust to carry my legacy. You need stability to chase your dreams. It's a deal, not a romance." Ethan laughed, thinking it was a joke, but her piercing gaze held no humor. She offered him a contract, marriage for 1 year, after which he'd inherit enough to fund his social work ambitions. In return, he'd help manage her charitable foundation. Ethan hesitated. Marriage was sacred to him, a promise his parents had cherished. But Eleanor's offer wasn't about love, it was about impact. He thought of the kids at the shelter, the ones he could help with real resources. Against his better judgment, he said yes. The wedding was a quiet affair, just a courthouse ceremony with a clerk and Eleanor's longtime assistant, Maria, as a witness. Social media exploded with speculation. #GoldDigger Ethan trended alongside cruel memes about Eleanor's age. Ethan ignored the noise, focusing on his new role at the foundation. Eleanor was a whirlwind, teaching him the intricacies of her world while marveling at his instinct for helping others. They were an odd pair, her sharp pragmatism clashing with his quiet idealism, but they worked. 7 days later, Ethan walked into Eleanor's sprawling penthouse for a scheduled meeting. He expected spreadsheets and coffee. Instead, he found her sitting on the floor, surrounded by old photo albums, her face streaked with tears. "Ethan," she said, her voice breaking, "I need to show you something." She handed him a faded photograph of a young woman holding a baby. The woman looked like Eleanor, but softer, unguarded. "That's me," she whispered. "And my daughter." Ethan's breath caught. Eleanor had never mentioned a child. She told him the story she'd buried for decades. At 20, she'd been a single mother, struggling to survive. Her daughter, Lily, was 2 when Eleanor, desperate and broke, gave her up for adoption to give her a better life. It was a wound that never healed. Eleanor had built her empire to prove she was enough, but the guilt lingered. Now, at 71, she'd hired investigators to find Lily, only to learn she'd passed away 5 years ago from leukemia. But Lily had left behind a son, Eleanor's grandson, Noah, now 17 and in foster care. Ethan's heart sank. He knew the foster system's cracks too well. Kids like Noah often slipped through, unseen. Without a word, he sat beside Eleanor, holding her hand as she wept. It was the first time he'd seen her vulnerable, and it shattered the image of the untouchable CEO. "We'll find him," Ethan promised. "We'll bring him home." The search for Noah became their shared mission. Ethan dove into the logistics, navigating social workers and legal hurdles with the same tenacity he'd used to survive his own hardships. Eleanor used her wealth and connections to cut through red tape. They found Noah in a group home in Chicago, a lanky teen with Eleanor's piercing blue eyes and a guarded heart. He was wary, used to disappointment, but Ethan's warmth and relentless kindness broke through. When Noah learned Eleanor was his grandmother, he didn't believe it, until she showed him the same photo she'd shown Ethan, her hands trembling. Bringing Noah into their lives wasn't easy. He was angry, mistrustful, and haunted by years of instability. But Ethan, who'd known loss and hunger himself, became Noah's anchor. He tutored him, played basketball with him, listened to his fears. Eleanor, meanwhile, learned to soften, her boardroom steel giving way to grandmotherly affection. She funded Noah's therapy, enrolled him in a good school, and, for the first time, felt like family wasn't just a word. The world watched their story unfold, the tabloids shifting from scorn to fascination. Hashtag Ethan and Eleanor became a hashtag for hope, a testament to unlikely bonds. But the real turning point came months later, at a gala for the Voss Foundation. Ethan, in a borrowed tux, stood beside Eleanor as she announced a new initiative, a nationwide network of shelters for foster kids, inspired by Noah. The crowd rose in applause, but Ethan's eyes were on Noah, who stood at the back, tears in his eyes, clapping for the first time. As the year ended, Ethan and Eleanor's contract neared its close. They sat in her penthouse, now filled with Noah's artwork and laughter. "You don't need my money anymore," Eleanor said, her voice steady but soft. "You've already changed the world." Ethan smiled, shaking his head. "We did it together." He didn't need the inheritance. He'd found purpose in their strange, beautiful family. Eleanor, once afraid of vulnerability, had found love in giving it. And Noah, once lost, had found a home. They didn't end the marriage. Not because of money or contracts, but because they built something real, a legacy of kindness that outshone any fortune. The world saw a poor student and a billionaire, but Ethan and Eleanor saw each other, two souls who'd learned that humanity's greatest power is in giving, not taking. And in Noah's smile, they saw the future,